Well, the parish commission, and with myself being an inner city commissioner, we are charged with the responsibility of animal control, juvenile services. We do the tax collection of property taxes in the city, and outside of the city, we take care of both police, fire, and other municipality functionality. I always like to distinguish that the fact that being an inner city urban commissioner is a little bit different from people who have to take care of the rural, because our scope becomes a little bit more limited in terms of the animal control, juvenile services, and then we oversee the budget of the sheriff's office, the jail, and the DA's office, and some other functions of the parish. But my role as a commissioner, I think, is to always redistribute whatever resources that come in as tax dollars of Caddo Parish in the most prudent, efficient fashion as possible. We do NGO, economic development funds, that are derived from the casinos. They are quote unquote tax dollars by extension, but they are created as dollars that come directly from the riverboats into our coffers. And we redistribute those dollars in the way of NGOs, which are non-governmental organizations, and economic development efforts. I think we play a critical role in distributing those funds as efficiently and as fairly and as prudently as possible. And I think we've done a good job. And I've also maintained that mandated that my colleagues, that if we rake in $800,000, that we only spend $800,000, whether it be for NGO or whether it be economic development, respectively. And I think we also, as a role as a commissioner, with some of the expertise that commissioners bring to the table, we can also do stuff by extension. I'm a big proponent of opportunity zones. Opportunity zones don't fall in the purview of the Caddo Parish Commission, but because of my professional background and my desire for redeveloping the inner city communities, I use that knowledge, that professionalism, as a mechanism of being able to get information out to the community that's going to be substantial to them. And so, opportunity zones, I feel fundamentally a mechanism to revitalize the inner cities. And I've done several seminars. We're going to be bringing some people from out of town here. And so I've taken an opportunity with the knowledge I have, and in as much as the opportunity exists, to bring it to the citizens of Caddo Parish. That's an excellent question. I am a graduate of Dillard University with a finance degree. I am a graduate of Troy University with an MBA. I've attended the American Institute of Banking. As an undergraduate, right out of undergrad school, I worked for the Whitney National Bank, where I was in commercial lending, corporate banking. I've also, as a professional background, I've been in the investment industry, Series 76, 63, 65, and also been an insurance licensed agent since probably about 26 years now. Having said all of that, I have a wealth of knowledge as it relates to budgets, performance, and the like. So having had that experience in underwriting commercial loans as a banker, and also as a investment advisor to corporations where we've done like 401k plans, certain type of what's called simplified employee pension plans, where you take the client's financial statements to determine whether or not which plan would be best for them. So having said all of that, my background uniquely qualifies me to be able to oversee a budget, look at a budget, analyze it, I understand performance, I understand fund accounting, I understand as it relates to balance sheets, income statements, and et cetera. Well, fundamentally, I think as it relates to the amount of tax dollars that we rake in and the boundaries of both the parish and the city council, that should be divided up equally, or equitably, as I should say. The parish has done a good job in being prudent and conservative with its resources, and we do have some overflow. but in some areas we don't. I would like to see, if we can come together with a meeting of the minds between the city council and the parish commission, maybe how we can do some overlap as it relates to public safety. Public safety, once you get beyond the boundaries, you know, the biggest portion of Caddo Parish is Shreveport as the county seat, and then you got the outlying areas. But as it relates to crime, and that we're currently experiencing, not only if I live in the parish or if I live in Shreveport proper, we are both fundamentally affected by the increase in crime, whether it be from a personal perspective or whether it be the effect that it has on your business directly or indirectly. So as it relates to public safety, I would be in favor of us combining some services for the overall betterment of Caddo Parish and the city of Shreveport. That is a very fundamental topic that's been bounced around over the last year and a half. Fundamentally, when we have discussions about economic development, I always like to admonish people to make sure that we're on the same page as it relates to economic development. People have different notions or different ideologies as it relates to what they think economic development is. I fundamentally think that the resources that we use at the Parish Commission should be leveraged in such a way that it brings the best bang for the buck. So if that means the city, the parish, economic development organizations getting on board collectively as a unit to attract someone like an Amazon here, I think we should use those dollars in a very prudent way. Hire someone who's been in economic development with an extensive background, who understands whether or not you're chasing dreams or you're chasing some realities. Secondly, as it relates to economic development, we've got to define who Shreveport, Louisiana is in 2019. I see a lot of people, we want to compare ourselves to cities like New Orleans and cities like Houston and Dallas. Shreveport, Louisiana, unfortunately, is not one of those cities. We are, at best, could be a regional hub, whether it be in transportation, some carve out of tech, and we blossom into something bigger. Even when we look at New Orleans, we are not a New Orleans. We don't have the tourism, the culture that they have had for hundreds of years. But I do think we are a niche community, and we could use our economic developments to redefine ourselves and understand that economic development touches certain different segments of the community. That's education, that's the business community, that's culture, that's tourism. All of those mechanisms combined together help to bring economic development into the city and flourish and nurture the opportunities that we could garner here in the city of Shreveport and the parish of Caddo. So yes, I would like to see those dollars being spent in an efficient fashion, but more importantly, as a coalition, instead of the one-man army kind of thing we've done historically, kind of put people around the table and use those dollars across the board in an efficient fashion. Okay, first and foremost, I think that the parish has done an excellent job as it relates to the management of its resources. That's not because I'm saying it, that's because Moody's rating agency has given them a AAA rating about 6 or 7 months ago, and we were applauded, and we did applaud the administration and staff for the diligence by which they handle the finances and they execute those. There are millages that are coming up, and I always like to tell people this: there are millages that's on the book there that are extremely, maybe not extremely old, but they are dated. And the reason why I mention that is because we've got millages on the books that go back to 1959, where in 2019 is a different Shreveport Caddo Parish than it was in 1959. So because we have efficiently used the money in the Parish Commission, I think that all of what we going out for renewal, most of them should be renewed. In particular, I want to take a look at the juvenile services as it comes for renewal. There again, in a contemporary context, we are probably managing more juveniles than we did years ago. and because of what we see, the onslaught of what's going on in society, that needs to be a more nuanced approach. So I in particular think that we need to take a real close look at juvenile services and the funds. Over the last 4 or 5 years or so, there's been some deficits in that fund, and it definitely needs to be addressed. Okay, I will continue to be supportive of it because I think it will spur on economic development in Caddo Parish and the city of Shreveport. Just as a footnote, in 2016, I was on the commission and we put forth a resolution in support of the completion of the I-49. And so, as in 2016, I was supportive of it. 2016 and beyond, 2019, in the next legislative session, I will be just as supportive of bringing that to completion. It's kind of the gateway to the South right now. And I often tell people that, you know, this has been talked about, this has been battled around. We're going close to 30 years now, and so it's about time for us to get it done. It will be done, and I will be supportive of it. Okay, that's a good question. And let me first of all preface by saying that the UDC as a theory, as a living, breathing document, is an excellent idea for Caddo Parish in the city of Shreveport. We have saw that in other parts of the country, people put a unified commercial code in, and it has done wonders for its economic development. In some of the Texas cities, it's done well because it's a more vanilla type of law in which you're dealing with in the state of Texas. When you bring that over to the state of Louisiana, and particularly Caddo parishes, there are some nuances that exist here that are a little unique. There were some things in the UDC as it relates to the rural parts of the parish could have been were a little onerous. I mean, were a little duplication, were a little unnecessary, I felt. I think that, so we went through, and we being the parish submission, went through about 48 of them and made some changes to them and going to resubmit them. So to answer your question, yes, I will be in support of ratifying the UDC as a uniform code, but I'm going to be also in favor of what makes sense and what's practical for Caddo Parish, and particularly come to rural areas and for properties that have been in the inner city community for a long time, that are older properties that, because they were built under different standards, to bring them up to code, we want to make sure that's done in the most efficient and economic way. But just to go back to the beginning of the question again, UDC's been put in place in other parts of the country. They have done wonders for economic development because they have been able to streamline it for a contractor to come into the community, get your UDC code, figure out what he or she wants to build, submit their application, push it through, and get to work. And to that extent, I'm 100% in favor of it. I just want the UDC to be germane and functional to Caddo Parish. I've always liked to call myself a practical politician. I don't always need to be in the newspaper. I don't always need to be on the news. We are elected individual districts, and our responsibility is first and foremost our individual district, and then secondly, Caddo Parish as a whole and as a unit. I like to think that as a commissioner, I've been a practical person. I've reached across the aisle and made compromises when compromises need to be made. Stuff that I believe in that are germane and unique to my district, and the other commissioners are with me and they have similar situations in their district. I've always tried to toe the line to keep that vote in place, so if it's an ordinance, if it's a resolution, that it is passed. And you're absolutely right in terms of reaching out and working with state legislators and other organizations. I've been part of several organizations in the city of Shreveport. I've served on several boards. I have no problem attending functions and meetings of people who wants to come before the commission and share their ideas of how we make this a better community. My record indicates such. I'm 100% in favor of also when you get the opportunity to sit down with a state representative, or for that matter, a school board member, something that doesn't fall in the Caddo Parish preview, being able to sit down one-on-one and discuss them. Historically, I've written some op-eds in the Shreveport Times. Haven't done it most recently, but done it not pretty much since I've been elected, but historically I have done that. And I've always been the person to say, well, this is where I stand, this is what I believe, but that doesn't mean that it's perfect. I'm always willing to extend myself, reach across the aisle and say, how do we make what it is we're trying to do or what you're doing in Baton Rouge better for Caddo Parish? And also, just as a matter of knowledge, it's my preference I approach a state representative. I don't want to go to that person, him or her, tear the legislation up. I want to offer suggestions. So I would say, because I have an extended background, whether it be business, whether it be in education, whether it be in nonprofit organizations, serving on various boards, I bring that to the table, and I bring that sensitivity to the discussion with me and that legislator one-on-one. And I think I've been fairly successful, but there's always continued room for improvement. Okay, I think some of the top 3 priorities, as I alluded to earlier, I think we need to make some adjustments as it relates to juvenile services. You know, we've got the 17-year unfunded mandate. We need to discuss how we move forward in that venture and in that endeavor that is done in a prudent and efficient manner. I think that we should continue to manage our resources in the way that we've managed the resources to the extent that we've gone the AAA bond rating. So if that becomes, or it necessitates that we need to go out and do a bond issue as, you know, as we move down the road and we've got some negative balances in some of our operating funds, that we continue to operate in such a fashion that we're able to go out and do such. And then we need to look close at some of the renewals that we need, that are needed. I know in our modern day, contemporary climate, you know, no new taxes. And I understand about being overtaxed. I understand the issues and concerns that a citizen may have. They may not always have all the information, but that doesn't really matter. If this is how I feel, this is what's real to me. And so that just needs to be explained to individuals. But what I will do as it relates to supporting these efforts is to always sit around that horseshoe and have the common sense conversation. What makes sense, what doesn't make sense. Secondly, make sure that we're relying on viable information, whether it be from a subject matter expert, or bringing someone in who can discuss the expansion of the juvenile service or the expansion of the jail. And so that it will be my commitment that all the information that we're making decisions on, whether it be an ordinance, whether it be a resolution, that we're making these decisions based on empirical data and not strictly emotion, and that we want to bring in the concerns of the citizenry in this city and this parish to leverage their concerns. And so I am committed to making sure that happens and to vote accordingly when those issues do arise. I would say that I've been well-rounded. I started off by the first questions asked. My professional background. I think anyone that comes to an elected position, and it's me personally, I feel that you probably have some background in business, some background where you have ran something, you have managed something, you have overseen a budget, you have had to make a decision, or you have even had to make a payroll, because it brings a sensitivity to the responsibility of the resources that you are managing. So I've done that professionally. I've also had a extensive background civically. You know, when I moved back to Shreveport, Louisiana, my hometown, 2007, I kind of rolled my sleeves up and got to work. So I worked civically. I've had a Little League football team before. I've had a mentoring program called the Booker T. Washington Scholars Club. I've done this annual Black History event. It's called State of Black Shreveport, which is a symposium that does two things, that talks about the history of the African American community from a historical perspective and how do we improve it contemporarily. And there's an economic development component to it where we encourage people who hadn't participated in the business cycle as an entrepreneur. A, how do they get into the business cycle? A, how do they maintain themselves? And where do they go find capital? I've also been the author of a book called Let My People Go, Making Capitalism Work in Urban America. I've looked at it as a tool, a role model, a tool, a roadmap, a guide to what I call taking people off the bench and putting them on the field. What I mean by that, capitalism is the form of government that we subscribe to in the United States. And so that's not going to change anytime soon. So if you don't understand how capitalism works, you're essentially a spectator, because there's a wealth of opportunity for people in America, but for those who have prepared themselves. How you prepare yourself is to be equipped with the knowledge to go out and participate. And so that book has allowed me to be able to sell that book, get that information to people, take them off the bench, put them into capitalism, and let them move on down the road. Also, I have served on numerous boards in the city, out of the city when I lived out of town. Serving on those boards obviously has given me the functionality, how you conduct a meeting, Robert's Rules of Orders, and what are just some of the issues at a micro level on a board that you may also see addressed at the council, at the parish commission level. So those are events that have allowed me to prepare myself and have been an excellent backdrop for me to serve on the parish commission. I would say this. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for putting on these interviews and the concern that you guys have here in the city of Shreveport. I think the Chamber of Commerce is a very important entity in any city. You know, from a historical perspective, the Chamber of Commerce were designed as a mechanism for economic development years and years ago. In a modern day context, it's kind of morphed into something different between the synergy between government and them. But I would always admonish that you get the pulse of your city as it relates to economic development, as it relates to growing your city from the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is the heartbeat of the city and of the parish, and they are a good plumb line for us to engage in saying, you all could lead forward and saying, this is what we need. How do we, as a government, design and create the governmental activities in such a way that it makes it applicable and it makes it easy and viable for a person to come in and do business. So I just want to also reiterate that there's always a constant need for government and the Chamber of Commerce to be walking hand in hand as much as we can, as much as possible, philosophically.